Dude, it's so weird having like a window within a window within a window and a window and a window of a window. What's up? Today, I'm going to show you how to enhance your drums for a redrum edit. Okay, so I'll give you guys a little preview of what we are working with today, and then we'll go from there.
Screaming my name, late at night. Kiss me in the morning, late at night. Long as you come through, I'ma make you come over and over. I'ma treat you like I'm supposed to. You better never make no time for these. Cause when I ride, I'ma ride with you.
Kinda nice. All right, so the original song here is Late at Night, Roddy Ricch. So it's a lot slower too. I think it's like 90. Yeah, it's at like 100. So I actually boosted up to like 112 to kind of have that like K-Tronada-y like lounge house like tempo going. Because the song is definitely R&B, but I wanted to do more of that like lounge house style, especially if I'm like doing an opening set or something like that, or some other DJs using it, then that's a good track for them to open with that people also know at the same time. So first up here, from the top going down, we have our side chain here, which is just a click. And I always keep the volume all the way down on that because I use this as something to reference for my side chain to read. It's not actually an element that goes into a track. It's just the side chain like indicator. And then this is labeled transients. I'll show you in a sec here what's going on. So I just have your standard 4 to the floor kick. So I just used the fades here. So I just ended up like shaving all that off there. And if you can't seem to find your fades, all you have to do is just hit A on your keyboard. So this is your automation, and if you hit A again, you then have your fades. So I did the fade, and then I just hit Command D. So I highlighted this section, and I just spammed Command D, just held it down, and then that's how I was able to establish the kick for the redrum edit. And then next up, I have 2 claps going. And then I have a second one. So that second clap, I have it in terms of like volume, it's quieter because it's adding more of a tail. It's giving more length to it. So sometimes if you're like making a redrum edit and you're struggling to have your like one clap go through, the problem might not be the clap individually. Sometimes you need to layer multiple claps to establish the sound or get the sound that you're looking for. One of my favorite duos, Disclosure, I mean, they have like 3, sometimes even like 4 kicks just to make one kick sound. So definitely layer sounds and experiment that way, especially if you're making these redrum edits or just starting out. And then under this is a loop here, just like a percussion loop. There's a lot of low end that I didn't want, so I just had an EQ8 here, rolled all of that off with a filter. And then I have a shaker here. Speaking of Disclosure, actually one of the big things that I learned from them was always overdrive your shakers. I'll repeat this again. Always overdrive your shakers. There's a preset here in Ableton on your Overdrive plugin called Enhance. It sounds really, really good, especially when you throw it on a shaker here. So I'll give you the before and after. It just brings out a lot more of that like top end that you're looking for in those shakers. And then lastly, I have a hat loop that I chopped up for this edit. And then I just used an EQ here, and since there was a lot going on with this hat because it's kind of like a rolling hat, I used an auto filter to help with the transitions. So you can see it's making that like really quiet and it's filtered all the way down, which is really nice. And then another thing I did here was I control when the filter goes on and off because your hi-hats are taking up a high end of a spectrum, like your 10K, or it's probably from like 1K up is usually where you see a majority of the hi-hats going on. And if you leave your filter on, it'll roll off around that 20,000 hertz. So if you're not using your filter, make sure you have it off. Ugh, I can't speak today. Make sure you have the filter off, because if you have it on, it will shave off some of that top end. That's really crucial in a mix. And if you need to adjust that automation, you can just right click on it, hit show automation, and then it'll come up that way. So I referenced the side chain earlier on, and what is going on here is I'm just side chaining the living hell out of this track. So how I did that was I just put one of my compressors on the track here, and when you drop it in, it'll look something like this. Hit this arrow, and then I hit the button sidechain, and then that you're selecting what you want to sidechain to. And I want to sidechain to that like metronome click sound that I was referencing. That's on the top section. So audio from sidechain, which is what I have labeled, and then here, this is the signal that's coming through. So it's just that clicking sound. And then typically with these side chains, I just turn the ratio all the way up, attack all the way down, because I want it to be instantaneous. And then with the release, you can kind of finesse it to where you want it to be. I usually settle around the 50 milliseconds mark. And then your threshold will start at the top here, and you just put it all the way down to the bottom. And then on the percussion section, I actually duplicated the side chain. I just copied over the side chain from here. I copied it on the percussion section, and I just turned the threshold down a little bit. I still wanted it to duck any frequency, so that kick and that pumping sound is still going on. But I didn't want it to be as harsh as it was on the original audio track, the Roddy Ricch track, so I just dropped the threshold a little bit. But now we're on to the main course here, the transients section, which is the major drum processing that brings it kind of like front and center and has that like boom to it that you're looking for. So for this specific project, I decided to use a transient shaper called Smack Attack. And then I also use just Ableton's glue compressor here. Basically what I'm doing with the transient shaper is I'm just like boosting the transients. I mean, you can really crank this thing like... But at that point, it starts to sound a little bad. So I just have a really subtle effect going on here. And if I boost the sustain all the way up, it sounds absolutely terrible. And then next up, after the transient shaper, I have a glue compressor on here. And then what I'm doing here is I'm just reducing the dynamics, and I'm just bringing the higher highs down, the lower lows up, just so it's one more compact sound. Nothing crazy, only like 2.5 dB of compression going on here, but enough that it is actually a beneficial effect. And I'll just A/B the audio effect track I have here with the transient shaper and the parallel compressor. Alrighty, ladies and gents, that wraps it up for today's video. Hopefully you learned something new. If you did, make sure to like, subscribe, all of that good stuff. I'll put a link to the transient shaper, and next week I will be back with a video showing you guys how to improve your workflow when it comes to making edits. So how to crank out like 10 to 20 edits in a day instead of 2 to 3. But until then, take it easy, tell someone you love them, all that good stuff, and I'll be back soon.